So most of you know, I think, that a few years ago this church had sadly shrunk to a handful of faithful people. In its past, it had thrived. Indeed, a church was first planted here because St. John's in town was overflowing as the town grew. And in time, St. Edward's had a flourishing church family with excellent community links and a thriving community cafe and toddler group, not so different to today. It was a parish church in every sense of the words. Like many churches, changes, people growing older, less people in the wider community wanting to come to church and more meant that the congregation sadly dwindled. The faithful core remained committed, however, and saw the church through 4 years without a vicar and through the tough COVID years, and they were tough. There were conversations about the future of this church at higher levels, but Bishop Ruth, the Bishop of Horsham, stuck her neck out and fought for this church to retain a full-time parish priest, ready for an increase in housing in this parish. And we were given a mandate to revitalise the church, to turn it around. And that's what we've been seeking to do together over the last 3.5 years. Now, we've had some ups and downs in that time. We've had times of plateau, times of celebration, and times of great sorrow too. But overall, we're on the up. The congregation has grown. We've grown new and re-established old relationships in the parish. We've increased our giving to the parish share, which I'll talk about later, and we're well on our way to revitalisation, following a vision that we all prayed into 3.5 years ago. But being and growing a church isn't easy. We only need to look to the Bible to see how the church was grown and how the people of God behaved in the past. So in Genesis 28, for example, we read that God gave a dream to Jacob, who was later known as Israel. It was a promise to grow his family as a people and to be with them. And God says, "Know that I'm with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you." And then Jacob woke up from his sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place and I did not know it." And then he was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." The house of God being with the people. And yet we know that Jacob's life did not run smooth. Having tricked his brother, he was later cheated by his father-in-law. He had 2 wives and several concubines. His sons fought, and he himself wrestled with God. But his descendants were the foundations of the Jewish people of Israel. In Exodus, we read God's vision to Moses of the tabernacle, a place where God would travel and dwell with the people. And Moses saw in great detail how this was to be made. This was through a man who was also a murderer. In 2 Samuel, we see David with a vision of a more permanent temple, a home for God. And we know David loved God and God saw his heart, despite David's wrongdoing. And then Ezekiel, we heard from Ezekiel this morning. He was a prophet and he had a vision, which begins in Ezekiel 40, of the temple enlarged and measured out in great detail and patterns of worship laid out and who should minister and the offerings to be given. And then as we heard in chapter 47, Ezekiel is shown water flowing from this temple, getting deeper and deeper the further it goes out, bringing rivers of life teeming with fish, trees for food growing abundantly, a picture of the land of the people, a place of worship and the provision for God for them. And then in the New Testament, we see Peter as the foundation of the church, as we heard in our gospel reading. And then a bit further on in Ephesians 2, we see Paul telling people they are all members of God's household, built upon the foundation of the apostles and the prophets before them. This is the church that has grown from the people of Israel, from the family of Jacob and before him Abraham, joined with the followers of Christ, past, present and future, into the church with Christ as the cornerstone. In Ephesians 2 we read, "In him the whole structure is joined together and grows into a holy temple in the Lord, in whom you are also built together spiritually into a dwelling place for God." And this church is referred to in the Revelation as the bride of Christ. So our church today at St. Edward's here, us, We are part of that same journey. We are part of that legacy of building the church, of building a place of worship and community and family and the presence of God now carried within us. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we think about St. Edward today, who also knew about the building up of church because he was instrumental in the building of the original Westminster Abbey, and it was built in the 2nd century as a royal burial church and consecrated in 1065 and actually completed after his death. Sadly, it was later demolished to make way for the new building which stands today. But Edward knew what it meant to be part of continuing to grow and build the Church of God. So the legacy of church is one of God's vision, God's building through the people, through family, through the work of the Holy Spirit. And as I said, we continue that today. And we here have a vision which came about as a result of us praying together a few years ago. Now, last week I talked about the place of church in the wider world as vital, more than ever. Also that the place of us as the local church is equally vital, and that our place within it, each of us, is also fundamental. And you can catch that online if you didn't hear it. Because the church is all about the people. It always has been and always will be. We are the ones who reveal Jesus in this world and who build up the church. We continue to follow God's vision for the church here on a local level. King Edward, as we know, known for his witness and faith, and we too profess that faith. We are focused, like he was, on not the things that others prioritise, like wealth and power, but on goodness and faithfulness, on trust and peace, and so on. So likewise, we need to show a kingdom way of living to the world and to our community, and that is what we seek to do in all that we do. As I said last week, I don't like going the hard sell on giving, even though our treasurers would like me to talk about giving more, but I know it's really difficult. I know that many of us are so generous with our finances and with our time. But it is gift day, and we really do need all of us to contribute. As I said last week, it would be amazing if we just got an allotted share of the money from the Church of England from each month, for example, to do what we need to do. But it doesn't work like that, sadly. So we have to raise everything that we need to do the work of Christ here in our parish. And over the last few years, we've done really well financially. We've increased donations hugely, thanks to your generosity. We've received some amazing grant funding. We've had some generous one-off gifts. And with those, we've managed to pull off some big projects, like our community garden. We've employed a new cafe manager and a children's worker. We've put in a new sound and AV system. We bought new chairs. We've increased our parish share contribution, which is our part of the costs for the whole diocese. And we've paid our bills, importantly. But we still need to increase what we bring in order to keep doing what we're doing. To run our toddler sessions, to pay Paula, to run the cafe, to run community events, even to pay me and to keep a full-time priest here. And keep paying our bills. And we are doing all that we can to raise money. We're applying for grants. We're trying to increase our bookings, trying to increase cafe income, but we do need to aim higher. This year, every year we have a focus at Gift Day, and this year our focus points are towards the children's worker salary, which is a vital role in our vision, and our funding for this role comes to an end this year. We will be looking for further grant funding, but salaries are notoriously difficult to get grant funding for. And we also know that our heating system is going to need replacing in the next few years and is likely to cost in the region of £50,000. So we need to start raising money for that now. And we need to continue to increase our parish share contributions. So this year, 25% of all of our donations will go towards the parish share, which is what we've done for the last few years, and then the rest will be split 50-50 between the children's worker salary and the heating fund. Now, I get those might not seem as exciting as things we've raised money for in previous years, but they are absolutely vital to all that we do. So I'm going to give you some headlines for our children's work for the next year, and we've set some targets for us to work on. I cannot underestimate the work that Paula has done in drawing families into our church. It's amazing that we've got new families here this morning. We've got rainbow tots, we have our summer craft events and so on. They're extremely popular, and I know from the comments that people make how appreciated these things are by our wider community. And we also know that our garden church is drawing families and is growing organically. As I keep saying, people saying, is that an intended pun? It's not. It's just growing naturally. So we've been thinking more about how to help people who come to things like that, to Rainbow Tots or even a cafe, for example, or garden church, and how they might take a step into church. And the idea of a different type of service, not on a Sunday morning, that might be more easily accessible. So next year, or in fact starting in December, 3 times a year, we're going to host something as a sort of mixture between our craft events that we offer and a service. So Christmas, Easter, and another time, probably Harvest, where we can share a key Christian message in a way that, as I said, is more easily accessible. And from these, we hope to get some feedback and potentially grow other services in between those 3. And we're really excited about those. And the first of them is going to be at Christmas. So we're looking forward to that. Schools work has also been growing. It's the kind of thing that you guys probably don't see because it's out in the community. But both Southway and Gatton, so that's our local infant and primary school, have been asking us for more, junior school, infant and junior school, have been asking us for more input. So neither of those are church schools. They don't have to have the church coming in, and yet they're really keen to work with us more, which is amazing. It's really something to celebrate. And so in the coming year, we are going to be hosting a Christingle service for each school, and that's separate to our normal Christmas services. And next year, for each of them, an Ash Wednesday service, as well as some more assemblies as well. And I think most of you know, next week we're going to be hosting our very first prayer space for Southway, and Gattons would like us to host one for them next year as well. So there is a lot going on and a lot to celebrate there. Now, the heating system, a little bit less exciting, but I'm sure in the depths of winter we might be more pumped about it. With the heating system, we are looking to put ourselves ahead of the game. Many churches find themselves in a situation where the boiler packs up one day and all of a sudden they have to find thousands of pounds. But we want to get ourselves to the position where we start to build up a fund now. So we had an energy audit earlier in the year, and they estimated that our boilers, 2 boilers, have 3 to 5 years of life left. There might be a bit more, might be a bit less, but it does give us some time to plan accordingly to replace them. And all churches in the Church of England now have to replace boilers with sustainable ones as we work towards a net carbon zero target for 2030. And we've already been advised through our energy audit that our only option is an air source heat pump, which will really help our carbon footprint, bring down our fuel bills, and also really help us to be more sustainable in all that we do. At the moment, in addition to this, we have to charge huge amounts if anybody wants to book our building in the winter to cover the heating costs. So we hope that bringing down those bills in the long run, it will really help us to increase our bookings as well, which will subsequently bring in more finance. And finally, parish share. We might feel, well, why do we have to pay this to the diocese? It's a bit unfair, isn't it? But we are all part of the Diocese of Chichester, and every church here in Chichester, every church in the land, every Anglican church in the land pays a portion of the costs of the diocese, so that we can all work together for the kingdom of God here, particularly in Sussex. Now that covers things like clergy costs and housing, as well as training for ordinands and others. Now, we actually do quite well out of our parish share because even though we're not paying the full amount yet, we're trying to increase it each year. We do have me as a full-time priest. We also have an ordinand in training, so that's someone who's training to be a minister, in Jill. We have a reader, and we've had 3 people train as ALMs, authorised lay ministers, in the last few years. So actually, we are getting our money's worth. So just to go back to our reading, I would love us to imagine ourselves like the temple in Ezekiel's vision. So the man who's measuring out the water, the man is probably, as we would understand it today, represents Jesus. Shows Ezekiel water flowing from the temple. And the water flows right from the heart of the temple and out into the world around it. And the further it goes, the deeper it gets until it becomes a river deep enough to swim in. And along its banks of the river, life grows and trees flourish. The river flows into the land, and when it enters the sea of stagnant waters, the water becomes fresh and life thrives. And the river carries life to bring life from death. And the sea will become a place for fishing, we read. So I don't think that imagery will be lost on us, that from a place of worship, the temple, where God resides, life will flow into the wider world to community, and an abundance will flow with that. So, for example, we read of the trees on the riverbank that their leaves will not wither, nor will their fruit fail, but they will bear fresh fruit every month because the water for them flows from the sanctuary. So they're bursting with life and fruit. And then it goes on that their fruit will be for food and their leaves for healing. So life that comes from the temple, from God's presence, bringing sustenance, flourishing, and bringing healing in God's presence. This whole vision shows us that God gives life and flourishing and healing and growth through the water of life. So I wonder if we see ourselves and our church here a bit like that. Can we imagine that from St. Edward's flows life from the presence of God, increasing as it goes? Can we picture people, ourselves, coming here, being filled with the presence of God and taking that out into our parish, into our community? Can we picture people coming here and encountering God and going away filled with life? Because essentially that is what we are seeking to do as we grow. For ourselves to be filled up with the presence of God, and for that to go out into the wider community. So I hope and pray that we might be a river of life to our parish, and that we might all take a part in that, carrying God's presence with us, taking God with us into all we do, and also into our financial giving. Amen. So we're going to pray together in a moment, and Pauline's going to lead us. But during our offertory hymn a little bit later, we are going to have an opportunity to bring up our gifts if we would like to. So everybody's had the email and you might have printed out the form. If not, there are a few spare forms at the back of church. It would be really helpful if you could fill that in, at least with your name, so that we know who to thank afterwards and we can keep track of donations. But also, if you are a UK taxpayer, could you please fill in the gift aid declaration at the bottom of the form, because it makes a massive difference. It's no cost to you. We claim that back from the government, so it's quite sweet in that sense as well. So please do fill in a form. And I do know that we're not all necessarily in a position to give financially, and there is an option on the form to tick to commit to pray to the life and the work of the church as well. So that there's no reason why you can't fill in a form and bring it up, because we can all pray, although we would like your money as well. So be thinking about that, and we will bring those forward during the offertory. Let me hand over to Pauline.
They collect. Sovereign God, who set your servant Edward upon the